Hi, my name is Dan Gaze. I've actually been an adjunct instructor at Concordia, I think for 10 years. I took a year off last year and I'm back this year. Um, and my background is in exercise science and exercise physiology. And I like teaching at Concordia because it's a step away from my more administrative role at Mayo Clinic. Not a lot of opportunities for me to do exercise science related work at Mayo anymore, but it's nice to teach the students and also really to see how they react or respond to doing a lot of the self tests or home administered exercise tests, but also knowing that they have access to the lab if they're on campus. So it's really cool to deliver a lot of information in 8 weeks and see what happens at the end of it in terms of just different exercise interpretations, prescriptions for special populations. I'm in the undergraduate program now, and it's just really cool to see where everybody comes from when they get to Concordia and then where they hope to be once they graduate, whether it's staying on for master's or doctorate degrees. I guess my association or affiliation with exercise have always been active, but have recently, since 2017, have been coaching a cycling team in Southern Indiana. So it's been really neat to use technology to coach kids that are 9 hours away and then literally only see them for 3 days for their one race a year. So managing 18 to 21-year-olds is very an exercise in itself to make sure that they're staying disciplined, but also taking high level, interval training, physiological changes, doing cool stuff like blood flow restriction, and just seeing how it works. I'm learning that a lot of this is there's some really good placebo effects too with this population, but it's just neat to see and use the stuff that we teach the students, the stuff that I read about in different journals, and then apply it to athletes and really see how it can change, physiology, but also college is tough and they need some type of goal to get through it. So it's cool to see how that affects their mental health as well when they have something to work towards as a team.
Sorry, I'm really intrigued. What kind of racing are they doing? Are they doing like endurance, or is it time trial speed stuff, or what kind of things are they doing?
So their workouts are rounded based on like some critical profile testing. So I do some testing every 6 weeks, but it's ultimately one race, and it's a relay race around a 400-meter track that's cinders. So it's 33 teams. They all get one bike. The bike is exactly the same. So it's essentially the baton is the bicycle. So you have to take your rider profiles and then determine of those 200 laps, who's doing 20 really hard over the course of 2.5 hours, who's doing 100, who's able to, as other teams get off the track and make their exchange. It's if you've ever seen the movie Breaking Away, that's exactly what the race is.
They're just talking about that. Yeah.
So yeah. It's that race, and it's been going on since 1951. And I did it when I was in college, and now I coach the team that I raced for. So it's, I think that movie holds up a little bit. I think there's probably some stuff that would get sliced out now if they put it out in current day, but it's a really cool movie. I always cry at the end of it because it's super awesome, and I have a very close connection to it because the fraternity that I was in, the folks that wrote the movie is about guys that raced for the team that I was on. So there's a deeper connection, and the main character is actually still alive. I think he's in his late 80s, and still goes to the race every year and says hello to us. And it's a cool thing, and it got me through some tough times in college, and it gets a lot of these kids that are really dedicated through some, especially coming out of the pandemic, it gets kids back socially active, interactive. So yeah, we do a ton of training for 2.5 hours in April. So it's super stressful.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah.
Totally. That could be its own whole class curriculum thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interpersonal dynamics. There's a lot of time management, a lot of sports psychology, strength and conditioning. So yeah.
That does sound like a cool case study. Well, Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe so our topic today is fitness myths, and I have some that are in my mind.
Okay.
Teaching college students and even doing my own personal training clients, right? They'll come to me and be like, well, I read this, or I want to exercise in the fat burning zone, or I want to. Also, these things that they see, and part of it is being health literate and knowing where to find your information. But I think we're doing a disservice if we're not helping people correct some of those myths and letting them know the science behind it. So I would love to know when you or are working with your high school and college age kids training for this, are there things that bubble up from them like, oh, I read this here, or I saw this there, and you have to kind of tell the myth if you're willing to share one or two?
Yeah, no, all the time. And really it's, kids are curious. I think even more so curious than when I was in college, because we just didn't have the access to information, whether you like it or not. A lot of things, like I know recently the boys all wanted, and I only coach men, so I don't have any females to compare this to, but I know they're very interested in like not blood flow restriction, because I found some pretty good evidence in cycling that would help, but the recovery boots that you've seen, like that when folks are done, and so they all wanted them, and they're super expensive, and we have a decent budget, but I'm not going to first say, yeah, go get $1,000 worth of these things, but they wanted them, and they said, well, we want these because we heard the other teams are using them and we think they'd be beneficial. I said, okay, well, how many of you are getting 8 hours of sleep at night? Oh, not many of us. How many of you are eating 4 or 5 meals a day, recovering, all the kinds of nutrition and just normal stuff? Because a lot of them want to jump to, and certainly a lot of populations want to do this too, jump to the things that seem to be easy fixes without fixing some of the things that can be more modifiable, like sleep and decreasing screen time towards bed, all these different things. So another one was they wanted to do like beetroot juice and nitric oxide, or take like NO2 supplements. I think all that's fine, but you shouldn't use it as a way to supplement actual consistency with workouts. Or if a lot of this stuff gets in the way of you doing things normally, like you're not getting enough sleep because you're focused on X, Y, or Z, but you think the Normatec boots are going to take you to the next level, I always want to have them give me ideas of what they hope to improve upon, because I think that's important, that kids are curious. And like with each of our workouts, I send them a video every morning to explain the benefits of, this interval is this and this ends this way, because I want them to be just as invested in what we're doing. And I expect the same, that they, if they have an idea, I'm never going to shoot it down. I'll typically find, because PubMed is great, and you can find like meta-analyses and then distill it down to, hey, listen, this might work, it might not. So it doesn't really matter. Or what was I just looking at? Oh, colostrum is popping up on my Facebook in terms of supplementation. The evidence for humans, it's so low. So it's, you see this blasted in front of you, but it's very easy to do a quick study, but also teaching them at that age to be mindful of what's out there, be mindful of who's putting it out there and what the benefit might be from a commercial standpoint versus an actual evidence-based standpoint. And I'm spoiled because I work at Mayo, so everything we do and think about has to be evidence-based in order to get it into the hands of the patients or into our labs. But it's really cool to see what they ask, because they're asking questions about, stuff that's probably fads, but also now granular level questions about their workouts, even like, hey, this looks like it's a VO2 max workout, but tell me more about why this is beneficial and why I have to do this versus why can't I just go right outside for 2 hours and, do whatever. So I think it's great to have curious young adults that are interested in this field, because exercise science, kinesia, it's like the Wild West, right? People are saying and doing a lot, and whether it's good or bad, there's still a focus on exercise, but we want to make sure that it's a healthy focus and a healthy balance of not overdoing it and not underdoing it, but to the earlier point, stressing the body enough to really help us live a longer life, but with higher quality of life as we age.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Great.
It's so fun. Like when they ask me these questions, it's so fun, because it's like, I have to slow myself down. I'm like, okay, well, don't just tell them no right away, but tell them why, and make sure that you're, validating that they're actually looking into this, but also, there's some real risk, or there's some real, detriment to doing some of these things outside of them spending their own money. For college kids, there's not a lot of money to be spent. So
I'm sure discussing the hierarchy of credible resources too, from case studies all the way up to meta-analyses or literature reviews on a specific topic, might be a really helpful thing for you as well. I know I love talking about that when somebody says, oh, I read this book about X, Y, and Z. And when I look at the author, it wasn't maybe a peer-reviewed piece, or they don't necessarily even have credentials in the field that they're writing about. It's like, well, I mean, anybody can make something and publish it on Amazon. It doesn't mean that it's actually credible. let's go back and compare that to maybe meta-analyses like you talked about, lit reviews, randomized control trials, things like that, to see if what they're stating actually is supported by the credible literature. But yeah, I love that process overall, just the learning and not necessarily sticking in one train of thought. Like, this may be what the current literature says, but leaving a door cracked open that we could find things later on down the line that would say, to strengthen this, or might actually negate what we're finding out. So being open for that and not be set in your ways or set in your thought process around a specific thing is kind of a key thing I like to talk about. But is it all right if I talk about one of my, I don't know if it's necessarily like pet peeve or whatnot, but whenever people are talking about like post-exercise feelings, like when they're 2 or 3 days after, like, man, that lactate's still in my body. I'm like, no, you have DOMS, you have delayed onset muscle soreness that's causing that pain. It's not this lactate buildup that is like you're having to flush out this. Or whenever people are talking about toxins, I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't know what the word toxin means to you. I know what that means to me, but let's just make sure that we're talking about the same things, because people will use like, well, I'm going to flush out these toxins.
Do my detox.
Like, do my detox. I'm like, that can mean a whole host of things. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's get on the same page. And like, then we can talk about, is this actually a thing that gets flushed out or is it not? And then the other piece is always this body composition, BMI, and that conversation, because there's now this large trend of just throwing BMI out. Like, it's a useless term. It's a useless measure. From a physiological standpoint, it doesn't really make sense because we're a volume, not a two-dimensional piece. So the meters squared part doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's really just a ratio that you're looking at of weight to your height squared. And the data that's been included and compared, correlated with, shows that typically bigger people are going to have more health risks. So you can't just throw that number out as it doesn't mean anything. But then again, you also can't say, well, that person's unhealthy because they could have a large muscle mass compared to body fat. So having this kind of muddled understanding of what BMI is, what body fat percentage is, how you'd use those. One's going to be more of a population measure. One could be more of a personalized measure, and you can then measure over time, are we improving, are we not? And then like comparing pounds of fat versus pounds of muscle. I don't know how many times I've heard like muscle weighs more than fat. I'm like, that's not true if you're comparing a pound of muscle to a pound of fat. Like, they're both a pound. But I think like the understanding is the volume that takes up, the density of that. Then we can talk about that. So the density of muscle is certainly higher than the density of fat. So using the right language to communicate things, I think, is one of my, like, it's not even really a trend or a fad, but it's like, it's going to increase your overall credibility and then inform your research into the literature so that you're asking the right questions and finding the right solutions to those questions. So.
Yeah, good examples, especially the BMI and fat and muscle. And I don't know if people use that as justifications or like Dan said, the easy way out, right? So yeah. Lana, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've taught fitness classes for multiple decades. What were some of the what were some of the things that your people were coming into your fitness classes wearing ankle weights, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
There's been some fads through the years.
So
sure.
What kinds of maybe unsafe things have you seen evolve or change with the fitness industry?
I think group fitness has a challenge itself because it is a group of people working out and you have one instructor. I mean, it's different when you have a personal trainer one-on-one and they're designing a program just for you and they're watching you and they're modifying for you. All of a sudden you put 40 people in a room and they're lifting 10, 20, 30 pounds, and one instructor up front trying to get the music to go right and worried about the fans and the lights and not even paying attention to 40 people doing things wrong. So there's definitely a challenge in group fitness, but I mean, I kind of agree. People like to work out with other people. So the social aspect is so important. So how do you make it social, fun, and still have it be safe? So there's definitely challenges. And I always say when someone comes in with a fad, I'm like, well, is it safe? But does it also motivate you? So if you are motivated because you bought a little circle thing that you can stand on,
Right.
Okay, well then stand on the circle thing, right? If that's going to motivate you to work out more than if you didn't have the circle thing. But you have to put safety first. So definitely there's been a lot of fads through the years, but I think group fitness, especially now we went through COVID, we moved things online. Now think about it. You're teaching to 50 people online. You have no idea what they're doing. I usually sit and eat popcorn when I participate in those classes. So the instructor can't, I mean, you have to be very good at visual and verbal cueing and giving tidbits of common sense. You can't say stretch your gastrocnemius because nobody knows what that is, right? You have to use actual terms that people understand. So yeah, group fitness is fun. I think it's, when did it come about? In the 70s? I mean, it's been around for 50 years. It's not going away, but the trends, the fads, the things that come along with it. And I do think one thing we've seen is a lot of group fitness instructors aren't keeping up their certifications since COVID.
Sure.
And so now you have a lot of gyms that don't even know what certifications mean for group fitness, having people teach who have no background and no idea what they're doing. And when you stand up in front of 50 people and tell them this is good, right? And you yourself might be really fit, they just take it like gospel.
Yep.
And
Right.
they don't say, wait a minute, what's your background? What's your training? You know, where did you get this from? Right? Was it a gimmick you saw? I mean, sometimes we have instructors finding things on YouTube and then using them in class, and they're actually really harmful. So yeah. Anyway, group fitness is fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, have you used any of those altitude training masks?
I have not.
Oh.
I do not train.
It's fun to see people with those in the gym.
Can we talk about those for a hot second?
Well, I think you can usually pick the subpopulation are folks that are, I think, watch MMA, because I think a lot of MMA fighters wear them on Instagram as they train. So then I think, I mean, they work, right? If you're looking to do some like diaphragmatic or intercostal muscle training or like respiratory training. So the path in which they are delivered is incorrect. But again, it's like nomenclature, right? It's not super sexy to say, well, you're training your intercostal muscles to, help prevent any kind of fatigue at higher expansion rates of the lungs. It's cooler to say it's an altitude training mask.
Right.
It is totally not, because you're still in 21% oxygen. You're not restricting anything.
Yes.
And I knew kids in college that they were really elite cyclists that like built their own oxygen tents. It's not a way to go about life to like sleep in an oxygen chamber.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. But it's part of the. I don't see this as a problem in the industry, because it's nothing we can stop. But it's just one of these things where, and there's 1,000 examples of, it doesn't really matter what we're saying. It matters that it's being sold and that people are adhering to it. And Lana, back to your point, like, are people exercising? That's really the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
We're getting more people moving, but then at what cost, or at what detriment, or at what decrement in physiology, comprehension of what's going on, knowledge about, the lactic acid still being in my legs 3 days later when they've just run a downhill marathon. Well, no, it's 1,000 eccentric movements with a bunch of micro tears. Like, it's none of that.
Right.
So I think it's like a Sisyphean task for instructors to just keep rolling this rock and coming back down to the middle and saying, well, here we are again. It's people don't really know what anaerobic means, or they don't know what, they say aerobics as a term like Kleenex, but they're thinking about group fitness and not aerobic exercise. It's really difficult to educate when the, I'll say the loudest abusers of the terminology and the right fit of things are the ones that have a larger platform. So that's why I always like to, like, when I start off my classes, especially when they were synchronous and we had session, the WebEx sessions. Wow, it predates Zoom even. How old does that make me seem? like what I was always telling the students was, I'm preparing all of you to be colleagues, as if when you're done with this class, you get a job working. And at the time I was doing exercise prescription. Like that's really the goal, is to get everybody in a working level of knowledge
Yeah.
to where I'd feel comfortable working alongside of you. So to get at some of those misnomers. And I love when,
Yes.
I really do like when folks make some of those errors in the discussion board, because it's a great education point. And I definitely don't take points off because it's totally naive in terms of some of those
It's a
things.
discussion. It's a
Mhm.
Yeah.
discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But it's so much fun. Like that's why the undergraduate program and the courses that you all have put together, and you've allowed me to put my fingerprint on a couple of them too. Like it's just so cool, because like to put in the landmark metformin diabetes prevention program research paper in there for folks to read, like it's amazing. Like it's amazing to distill that level of knowledge down, but then also in that same class have them critique a submaximal or maximal VO2 test over YouTube. Like just the ability for us to deliver the right information in such a condensed package leads us to have really informed students that are leaving. And hopefully, Ashley, that's what you feel when you leave too, in terms of like the stuff that you said dance is your method of movement, but you don't exercise, per se, but like dance is super hard. I'd rather go lift weights than dance. Like I'll go to a wedding and dance and have my whoop on or whatever. And it's like, holy cow, it's like to do that 7 days a week. Like that's,
Uh-huh.
it's not for someone that's 6'4" and 200 pounds. Like I can't do that. And it just takes a tremendous level of ability and focus and mental concentration that you can't really eke through a workout in the same way you can't have a lack of focus when you're doing some type of formal or like competitive dance. It's just really cool.
Start dance Fridays.
There we
Dance party Friday.
Dance party Fridays. We should start right here in the like we do on, was that channel 9?
Ashley and Annabelle, and again, you ladies can step away if you want to, if you don't have anything to say, but you are probably the two most plugged in on social media than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Gen Xers and backwards.
I'm pretty.
But what kinds of, and I remember reading 17 magazine or Cosmo magazine when I was young, and it was like top 10 fitness must do's or whatever. So you get all this clickbait in these headlines. But what are some things that, thanks, Dan. What are some things that you ladies see now bubbling up for fitness or wellness that maybe makes you raise an eyebrow to be like, how scientific is that? Or, like, this doesn't really make much sense. I don't know if what you guys have been seeing in your research.
You go.
I think the first things that I saw was like Chloe Ting's during COVID. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a really skinny girl that had like a six pack and was like, here's my workout. And then everybody was doing it.
Okay.
Like everybody was doing it. Millions of views on YouTube.
Mhm.
I knew who this girl was. She was just doing her
She
own
just
ab
looks good.
workout. And then everybody was like, dang, it's not working for me.
Yeah.
Oh, really? And then there's like ads on Snapchat that are like flat tummy tea, like supplements, that like, Bloom. Is that Bloom?
Bloom, yeah.
That people act like it's like getting really thin, which I think might just be some sort of laxative.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That makes sense.
But yeah,
That'll get you thin.
it will.
I see a lot of that stuff too, or like teas too, teas that will make you skinny or whatever.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the new like TikTok things
Yeah.
about the use of Miralax to stay thin?
Oh.
There's now a shortage of Miralax because so many people are using it as a
There's
skinny
yeah,
drug.
there's a lot of fitness influencers that will give you all of their advice, but you're supposed to trust them because they're fitness influencers that just started working out. So I think that's definitely like more of a problem than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
people giving unsolicited advice online.
I think that has been around forever because back in my day it was even Jane Fonda who started aerobics. she had no fitness background. She was a model.
Right, she just looked.
And they
pretty.
asked her to model the product and she said she just like did what they told her to do, but she had no idea what it was. And then it was Billy Blanks who came out with Tybo.
Yeah.
And his warm up was neck rolls. And he go, all right, let's go. And I think I am not warmed up.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And then Brooke Shields came out with a workout video that everybody did and everybody got hurt. Like you physically could not do it from beginning to end without throwing your back out.
Yeah.
But she didn't know because she was a model and she was just doing this thing. So I think it's been around like forever, but I think with social media,
It's like,
amplified.
oh, this
Oh,
person,
yes.
this is the body that I want instead of like, this is how fit I want.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, oh, I don't look like this person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna sit and
Yeah.
eat popcorn while I watch
Yes.
the video. Yeah.
And one of the problems with the social media influence piece is you can see, like you said, millions of viewers or millions of
Yes.
followers and
Uh-huh.
subscribers. And so when you then take that into like an academic setting and you maybe challenge that with some data from research, people will be like, well, how could that even be? Me and 4 million other people are doing this. Like that can't be right. And so it's almost like you're fighting against the mob at times and mob mentality with science. And
Yeah.
and somehow like they
The mob is the credibility.
yeah, which is very
Uh-huh.
odd. Like if enough people are doing it, oh, that must be the
Yes,
credible thing.
that
Which
makes
is
it. Yeah.
yeah. So like that can be really difficult trying to titrate out which one of these is actually credible and the mob's doing it, or which one of these is credible and the mob's not doing it, or they're doing the opposite of what that is. So but yeah, you want to get clicks, like you were saying, Jen. You want to have like the more clicks you get, the more money that you get, the more money that you get, the more content you can make. And then this is just this big cycle for a lot of influencers that maybe don't have the credibility, but that's their job.
Mhm.
And if it's their job, then they become credible over time, even if they aren't necessarily taking the steps to be credible. So yeah. It's interesting.
Mhm.
I'll wrap this up with if anybody has one or two more fitness myths that have been pervasive or have been pet peeves for them or anything else. We do have blood pressure opportunities to learn how to use blood pressure cuff in a couple minutes. So if anybody wants to stick around, they can do that. But any last one or two fitness myths? I see Dr. O itching.
No, I mean, well, they're just like technology in general, and we've talked about this, like it can be a huge benefit, but also can be,
Be motivated.
yeah. And
Mhm.
like we've all kind of been saying, like if it gets you to exercise,
Mhm.
great. But like,
Safely.
yeah, just this idea of, oh, I'm eating the right amount of calories or whatever. I've seen some, and I think the social influencer actually like died because of the diet that they were having, but they were on a only fruit diet.
Mm.
And
This is the one that starved.
yeah, she like starved to death because
Oh my God.
she just ate only fruit. But again, people were following her and like probably emulating that. I don't know. And you're like, this is not healthy. And so like the diet and the exercise piece, those two are just so hot right now because everybody wants to improve their body. But then we also love extremes. And so I think the extreme part of all of these, and like, Dan was saying, what you were saying, Jen, what we've all kind of been saying, people want quick results. They don't want to have a lifestyle change.
Yes.
And for me, it's harder to sell a lifestyle change because people don't want to change their
Mhm.
life.
Right.
And so
Easier to
they
take
just want a
pill
quick
or
add-on.
something.
Yes, a
Yep.
quick add-on that I don't have to think about. And so, yeah. Oh, and I'm
It's
guilty of that too.
everybody.
No, it's everybody. And so, but
Right.
that's like you're hardwired to want that. You don't want to go through the hard.
Correct.
And so just trying to find the right hard that's going to give you the right results
Yeah.
is
The challenge.
the challenge. Is the challenge.
But I had a trainer recently said, if you like working out, you're not doing it right.
Hmm.
And I don't like that because I wanna make it like, you know what I
You
mean?
want to
I
be able
don't,
to
I want it to
sustain.
be fun. I want to, you know what I mean? I want that. And as soon as it's not fun or I don't,
Yeah.
I won't do it. So I thought for a professional trainer, a full-time trainer to have that philosophy is very different
Yeah.
than I think delayed onset muscle soreness is a good thing.
Totally.
Feeling what you worked the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later, that's a good thing.
Right.
But I don't think not enjoying it is a good thing.
No.
And so,
Were
um,
they alluding to the fact that the not enjoying it would be like, if you're enjoying it, you're not like working hard enough?
right. That's what he was saying.
Is that part of what people associate with the term workouts.
Sure.
Workouts, again, in my head, generally means you're going beyond the point of comfort.
Right.
Sure.
Whereas being healthy, you
Yeah.
could just say being healthy, and that's movement and exercise and working
Well, those are,
out.
what are those called? Those daily
Daily
activities of
activity.
daily living.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just being, like you said, to walk to your car, to do things daily living, gardening, mowing the yard, all that
Lose
stuff.
ADLs,
Yeah, ADLs.
activities of daily life or living. Yeah. Mhm.
So that's like a different measurement.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But people have also been programmed to think like, yeah, it should hurt, or I'm not doing it right, or I'm not getting benefit.
Yeah.
And then people don't enjoy the hurt because yes, our bodies are not attracted to things that are gonna be hard for us.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like, so
If
there's
I
a big.
told you it was gonna hurt, you'd say I'm not coming.
Right.
Right?
That's
Unless there's a
That would
good,
be me too.
unless there's a good community of people that you've been plugged into. And that's why I like working out with
Yeah,
people,
Yeah.
because on my own, why would I want to put myself through hard stuff? But like
Mhm.
a whole bunch of other people are doing it that I enjoy and I love being around. It's like, oh yeah, let's all suffer together. That sounds fun. But yeah, I think just the whole idea of like any of these fad things, you almost have to come at it from a completely different mindset. If I want to get healthy, I need to make the step to do it all the time or be as consistent as
Consistent.
possible. Instead of like, I'm going to do this for a season, I'm going to diet for a season and then I'm over. It's like, or you could just change your diet so that this is how you eat.
Lifestyle.
Like that's just the way that you're eating, or this is just the way that my schedule is. And I'm making these small changes. And over time, they're going to have a huge dividend paid out because I'm making that small change of, I'm just not going to drink soda today.
Sounds
then I
like
just-
an atomic habit.
It is an atomic habit.
Well,
Wow.
and one of the things we do in our sport management class is we challenge them to pick a fad that's healthy, that's a good fad, and then as a manager, figure out how to keep it going.
Good.
Right? It's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. But I think that's if it is like, I don't know, pickleball, it comes in and
Totally.
you're like, I
Oh,
think
that's a
this
good
could
fad.
actually be
Yeah.
beneficial
Yeah.
for people. So as someone who graduates from college and gets a job where you can actually be a leader, a manager, how do we take this fad, this like craze that's coming in, and how do we get it to keep going?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the other side of this is some of them, yeah, we don't want them to stick around, but if we see something like legitimately good,
Mhm.
how do we keep people engaged longer? And that's, I don't need
You just have like floating hands. They're just like,
I clap with my hands. Sorry.
it's all good. I do the same.
Thanks for everybody joining us online and watching this video after the fact. Hope that this has given you some food for thought.